Hello everyone, welcome back to the Don't Kale My Vibe gardening channel. I did change my hair color since the last time you guys saw me. If you watch my main channel, I have a video on that coming up soon. But I'm so excited because I can actually sit down today and share my garden plans with you guys because I finally decided what I am doing with these two beds. I actually already did it, and that's also in my main channel video, but I'll tell you guys right now, it's onions. Because in the last video, I mentioned that I might have 300 onions coming, and I was like, but that's so many. Do you know how many I actually ended up with? 550. So there was a little bit of a mix-up. I ordered plants that I knew were coming, 125 red candy onions. I knew about those onions, and I knew that I ordered 300 onion bulbs in a mixed variety. My plan was to plant the red candy onion plants and then to store the bulbs for fall, hopefully. I don't know how long you can store bulbs for, but I thought I would save those till fall and overwinter them. But I also ordered 125 what I thought and what my receipt said were Georgia Queen onion seeds. Like, it said seeds. And I thought it was weird that the price was the same as the plants, but I wasn't going to question it. I thought maybe they were just a larger onion variety, maybe rare or something. And so I thought, like, yeah, $29 sounds reasonable. So what actually came was another 125 onion plants. I emailed customer service about the mix-up, but I did plant as many as I could. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today, my garden plans that are finally set in stone. So, as you guys know, or maybe you don't, I have 4 raised garden beds this year. Last year I had 3, and so it took me a long time to figure out what I was going to put in what bed, what plants were companion plants for each other, which ones would compete for nutrients, which ones had the same amount of watering needs, and stuff like that. So it took me a long time to get this set in stone, and I think I finally have it. So in my last garden bed, we are starting with what I think is going to be the tallest plants that I have, and I don't want them to shade out other plants, and that's why I stuck them in the back here. The south is actually back here, so the north is up here, in case you needed to know that. But in the back here, I actually have homemade trellises built that I built myself out of some, I think it was called like rabbit fencing or something like that, from Lowe's, and it was relatively cheap for a lot of it. And so I held it together with plant pikes, or just pikes, I don't know if they're floor plants. And then I also used like 100 zip ties. I might go in there with wire and eventually like reinforce it, because I heard zip ties can actually be affected by temperatures and stuff, and they can snap, and that's no good. But I'm gonna be growing my tomato plants on a trellis this year. For my garden beds, these are 2x4s in each half, so I guess they're technically a 2x8. I will actually be growing 6 tomato plants, so 2 in the center, 2 on the sides here. Oh wait, that's 4, not 6. I did plant 6 though. So the varieties that I'm going to be mixing in there are the orange peaches, the vintage wine, the giant crimson, and then a second orange peach, because I'm most excited about the orange peach tomatoes. And good companion plants for those are going to be carrots and basil. The basil is a heavily scented plant. I'll be growing in the center in between the tomatoes. I'm hoping the trellis will create shade, so that way the basil won't bolt, which is something that happens to plants that prefer cooler temperatures, that like to grow in shadier spots. So the basil will grow in between the 2 sets of tomatoes in each bed, and then I'll fit carrots in any space that I have in between here. In the second to last garden bed, the third garden bed, I'm going to be growing my eggplants. So this is the way I have it set up here. I have eggplant, 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 eggplant. I'll be growing a chamomile in between those 2, because chamomile is another scented plant that a lot of pests don't enjoy. And also I already planted chamomile with you guys in a separate video, so I already have those plants started. And also I'll be cutting the tops off the chamomile and making them into tea. So those are beneficial plants that like to grow next to each other. And then beans are actually a nitrogen fixer, and so the nightshade family, the eggplants and stuff, like nitrogen. So the peas, or actually green beans that I'm going to be growing, are going to supply that to those. I'm also going to be doing cayenne peppers in between the green beans in this bed, jalapeno peppers in between the green beans in this bed. Something else I forgot to mention about this 4th garden bed here, because I drew it so tiny, I'm going to be growing peas next to the tomatoes, also supplying nitrogen to the tomatoes, and they also enjoy a trellis because they're going to be vining beans, or peas, sorry. The peas are gonna go up the trellis next to the tomatoes, and I should have a really lush plant trellis in the back of my yard. So then in the second bed here, I'm going to actually just grow my really tall marigold plants. So I'm gonna have 2 in each bed here, 2 in each bed here, and then in front of them, I'm gonna have my ground cherries. The marigolds are gonna act as a pest deterrent for the ground cherries, and then I'm also going to have bell peppers in this bed here. I've talked about it in my last video. I'm not excited about bell peppers. If they don't do well, I don't really care. They did not do well for me last year. I believe the bell peppers were just a little bit too small. I also planted them a little bit late, so that's why I'm only doing 2 bell pepper plants and then 2 ground cherry plants. And then in this last garden bed here, that is where I actually planted 35 Georgia queen onions and 38 red candy onions. Those are already in the ground because we are kind of out of the danger zone for serious frost. The temperature shouldn't dip anywhere around 28 degrees. Our forecast says around 40 to 60 for the next week, and it'll probably go into another warm front since we have been having several 75-degree days. So I felt safe putting the onions in already. And then I have 7 of these tri-planters that you guys have seen here on my channel that I did in my garden haul from Dollar Tree. So I'm going to be planting all of my strawberry plants in those. I have a big galvanized planter here that has 2 blueberry bushes in it. I thought for sure they were dead. I'd never grown blueberries before, so when they lost all their leaves in the winter and they were just sticks in this plant box, I thought for sure they were gone and I was going to have to pull them up. But now that spring is coming, they're getting leaves again, and I'm so excited they're still alive. The only thing I'm going to be planting in that bed with those is going to be 1 mammoth dill plant. Dill is another good pest deterrent, and I think it'll go nice next to the blueberries because blueberries like acidic soil and the dill will tolerate it. I also have a lot of grow bags that I'm going to have on my patio this year. I used grow bags last year, so I have a lot left over, and that's where I'm going to grow my potatoes and sweet potatoes. So I do have sweet potatoes coming, and then I also have German butterball, which are just a basic, I think, white or yellow potato. Then in my hanging planters, I'm going to put the calendula. That's a medicinal plant that also creates little pretty yellow and orange flowers. Then I have 2 different pots. Actually, I have 4 different large pots. Last year, I successfully grew a large eggplant plant in one of these massive black pots. And so I'm going to be growing 2 eggplant plants in these big planters, and then I also have 2 extra ground cherry plants that I planted that I'll grow into other containers, and I'll just see like what works best for me. Like, does it work best to grow these things in pots, or will they do better in the garden beds? And I'll keep that in mind for next year. And we are not done. So I actually had a little bit of a pumpkin patch last year that I actually expanded this year to make much, much bigger, and I did my best to kind of calculate this by the square footage of like what can grow where. I marked out this little area because I have a large pile of compost. And so this is how this is going to go, and I hope that it works out. So I actually have my shed on this side here. I wish I had a better way to show this to you guys, but since nothing's in the ground, I can't really show it to you outside. But I am going to be growing 15 not 15 rows, but 15 corn plants. I'm growing the red strawberry popcorn. I'm doing the Three Sisters gardening method. So along every stalk of corn, I'll actually be planting a pole bean or a pole pea, something that's going to vine up the corn. In front of that directly, I have 2 different kinds of pumpkins. I'm actually going to be growing only one seed of each pumpkin. So I'm going to be doing the jack-o'-lantern pumpkins as well as the baby boo white pumpkins. So those are going to create a lot of large vines with huge leaves that are going to shade the rest of the plants, the corn and things, and it's going to create ground cover, and it's going to suppress weeds and things like that. And I marked off a huge spot here. Every little square here is a square foot of garden space. So this garden bed is actually massive. So I have plenty of room for my pumpkins. Next to it, I have the 2 different kinds of squash, the butternut and the acorn. And then along the perimeter, I'm going to sneak in some radishes, anything that really fits anywhere. Radishes are a great pest deterrent, so it's a great companion plant for the squashes and stuff. And then along my fence here, since it's a natural trellis, I'm going to actually put my cucumbers. Next to the cucumbers, another mammoth dill plant, and then I'm going to hide some nasturtiums. I don't know if I say that word right. I tried to buy them in a nursery once, and I asked the woman for nasturtiums, and she looked at me like I was crazy and said, I've never heard anyone call them that before. So I'm going to have nasturtiums for pest control as well as the mammoth dill, and those I'm kind of just going to place anywhere that I can fit them. And then lastly, I have my cut flower garden patch, which as you can see here, I kind of have loosely labeled. It doesn't really matter where I put these, they're all around the same height, but I have a bunch of straw flowers, a bunch of zinnias, and a bunch of carnations, and that's just my experiment of the year. I've never grown cut flowers before, or any really kind of flowers other than marigolds, and a couple nasturtiums. So I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if I'm going to have to create like some sort of rope trellis or something for them to like sturdy their stalks on. So we're going to see how that goes. I do already have those started, and my next video is going to be my seed starting video, because although I have started some things that are going to take longer to mature before they go in the ground, like peppers and tomatoes, I do have a bunch more seeds that take less time. Like I have not started any of the squash, any of the corn, cucumbers, beans, nothing like that. So I'm going to be starting seeds with you guys really soon. I did start the flowers probably a little bit too early, but we're just going to see how that goes. But that is all of my plants for my garden this year. I did go to the garden center recently and pick up a couple more seeds, but it's just a mixture of herbs, sage and rosemary that I can probably find a place for in the gardens. I also am going to be sneaking in carrots anywhere I have some free space in my garden beds, as long as that's a good companion plant for whatever's in there, which carrots aren't really all that picky. I might squeeze in a bunch of carrots by the tomatoes. I might grow a bunch of carrots in the blueberry trough again like I did last year, and just kind of fit them wherever I can. But that is my garden plans for this year. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.